Obese girl's family auctioned her off to pay debts. Mountain man bid everything he had and said, "She's priceless." The snow fell hard that morning in Copperfield, dusting the town square in a gray-white shroud. But the cold was not half as bitter as the spectacle taking place on the wooden platform. Arabella Bella Fairfax, 22 years old, stood trembling in her plain dress, cheeks blotched with shame, eyes glistening. Her father, Reginald Fairfax, dragged her forward by the arm as if she were livestock. "This here," he bellowed, his words slurred with whiskey and desperation, "is my daughter. She can scrub, cook, tend animals. Who'll take her? Highest bidder owns her outright." The crowd jeered. Men leaned on their rifles, laughing. A woman whispered loud enough to cut Bella's ears, "A cow in skirts?" Bella's lip quivered. Her arms folded tight across her body as if she could make herself vanish. Never had she felt so exposed, so reduced to nothing more than flesh to be bartered. Bids did not rise. No one wanted her. Just when the silence deepened, a voice thundered from the edge of the square. $1,000. The crowd gasped. Heads turned to see a giant of a man step forward, snow crunching under boots built for the mountains. Thaddeus Thad Stormridge, broad-shouldered, dark-bearded, a man who lived alone on Thunder Peak where storms split the sky. He reached into his coat, dropped a bundle of bills on the platform. "That is everything I have, and it is for her." Reginald's eyes widened. He slammed the gavel. "Sold!" Gasps rippled. Some laughed nervously, others shook their heads. But Thad climbed the platform, looked down at Bella with eyes steady as stone, and said softly, "You are not for sale, you are priceless." For the first time, Bella's tears spilled not from shame, but from disbelief. The townsfolk of Copperfield had long made Bella Fairfax the butt of their cruelest jokes. At 5 feet tall and heavy-set, with round cheeks and a soft frame, she had never fit their narrow mold of beauty. Children mimicked her gait on the street. Women whispered about how she ate more than a farmhand. Men dismissed her as useless, a burden too big to love. At first, Bella fought to ignore them, to lose herself in the small joys she could find, tending the church's orphanage, sharing her food with the hungry. But the whispers carved deeper with each passing year until she began to believe them. Her father, Reginald, only sharpened the blade. Once a merchant of some standing, he had squandered his fortune on cards and whiskey. When debts pressed, he looked at Bella not as his daughter, but as a commodity, a fat girl with no dowry, no beauty, no worth, except to cover his sins. So he hauled her to the square, the sack of shame heavy on her head, and offered her up to men who jeered at the thought of owning her. When Thad Stormridge's voice cut through the morning air, Bella flinched. She had heard of him, the recluse of Thunder Peak, a man as fierce as the storms that battered his mountain. They said he had once fought in wars, that his fists could break stone. Some claimed he was half wild, more beast than man. And yet, when he mounted the platform and placed himself beside her, his presence was not cruel. His shadow, broad and towering, shielded her from the crowd stares. His words, low and steady, stunned her more than his $1,000 bid. "You are priceless," he told her. The jeers faltered. For once, silence rippled across Copperfield. Reginald, meanwhile, pocketed the bills with trembling hands, already calculating how quickly he could gamble them away. "She's yours now," he said, voice thick with greed. "Do what you like. A man in the crowd snorted, "Hope you got a strong roof, Storm Ridge. That one will eat you out of cabin and cellar." Laughter roared again. Bella's face burned crimson, her heart twisting. She wanted the earth to swallow her whole. But Thad turned, his dark eyes scanning the crowd until the laughter died in throats. "Mock her again," he said, voice as heavy as thunder rolling down a canyon, "and you'll answer to me." No one replied. He offered his hand to Bella. Not rough, not forceful, steady, waiting. She hesitated, shame gnawing at her, but something in his gaze made her place her trembling fingers in his palm. As he led her down from the platform, whispers followed. Why spend so much? Why choose her? But Bella's ears rang only with the echo of his words. You are priceless. For the first time in her life, someone had said she was not a burden, not a bargain, but something worth everything a man had. And though doubt still weighed heavy, a spark, small, fragile, stirred in her chest. The road out of Copperfield wound north, narrowing as it left the valley and climbed toward the looming ridge of Thunder Peak. Bella trudged behind Thad, her skirts damp with snow, her breath puffing white in the frigid air. The cold bit at her cheeks, but it was not as sharp as the humiliation still echoing in her mind. You don't have to follow me, she whispered once, clutching the shawl tighter around her shoulders. I know what they all think, that I'll slow you down, that I'm nothing but trouble. Thad glanced back, his dark eyes unreadable beneath his thick brows. Let them think. I don't. He pressed onward, his long strides sure over the icy path. Every so often he paused to make certain she hadn't fallen too far behind. When her boot slipped on a patch of frozen rock, his hand shot out, steadying her as though she weighed no more than a child. They stopped by a stream at dusk. Thad set down his pack and began gathering wood. Bella tried to help, fumbling with brittle branches until her fingers stung raw. When one snapped too short, she muttered, I can't even do this right. Thad took the sticks from her hands, his movements calm, unhurried. You'll learn. He built a fire with practiced ease, sparks leaping to life under his flint. Bella huddled close to the flames, watching him unpack bread and dried venison. When he handed her the larger portion, she shook her head quickly. I don't need that much. You should eat. I will, he said simply. After you. The words held no indulgence, no pity, just quiet insistence. With trembling hands, Bella accepted the food, her throat tight. No one had ever placed her first before. That night, the mountain wind howled like wolves. Bella curled on the ground near the fire, shivering despite the flames. Thad noticed. Without a word, he took off his heavy cloak and laid it over her shoulders. You'll sleep warmer, he murmured. Her eyes burned with tears. But then you'll freeze. I've lived colder nights. He settled back, his back against a rock, rifle resting across his knees. His profile in the firelight was carved in shadow and strength. Bella lay awake long after, staring at the stars beyond the thin smoke of the fire. She whispered into the night, though he could not hear, Why are you being kind to me? The days stretched on. Snow thickened on the path, the climb growing steeper. Bella's legs ached, her breath ragged, but Thad kept the pace steady, never rushing, never leaving her behind. When her boot caught on a stone and she stumbled hard into the snow, shame flooded her. I'm useless, she groaned. Thad hauled her up with one strong hand. His voice was low, certain. You're still walking. That's more than useless. She blinked up at him, stunned. He released her gently, stepping ahead once more. On the fourth day, Wolves circled the ridge above. Their eyes glowed faint in the dusk, their howls slicing through the wind. Bella froze, terror gripping her chest. Thad raised his rifle, stance steady. "Stay behind me." When the largest wolf edged closer, he fired once into the air. The crack echoed like thunder, scattering the pack into the trees. Bella clutched his arm, trembling. He lowered the rifle slowly. "Fear keeps you alive, but don't let it own you." Her breath shook, but she nodded. That night, as firelight flickered against the rough canvas of their shelter, Bella gathered her courage. "Why did you spend so much on me? $1,000. It was everything you had." Thad's gaze lingered on the flames. "Because money can be earned again, but some things, some people, are worth more than all the gold in the mountains." Her heart thudded hard against her ribs. No one had ever spoken of her that way. For the first time, she wondered if she had been wrong all along. If maybe, just maybe, she was more than what Copperfield had told her. And though the mountain wind still wailed outside, within the circle of firelight, Bella felt a spark of warmth she had never known, the beginning of trust. Thunder Peak rose like a fortress against the sky, its jagged cliffs crowned with snow. When Thad finally led Bella into a clearing, a small log cabin stood waiting, a sturdy structure of hand-hewn timbers, smoke curling faintly from its stone chimney. "This is home," Thad said simply, pushing open the heavy door. Inside, warmth greeted her. A fire glowed in the hearth, the scent of pine sap mingling with smoke. Rough but solid furniture filled the room. A long table scarred with years of use, shelves stacked with jars of preserves and dried meat, a broad bed against one wall. Beside it, astonishingly, stood a second, smaller bed, as though prepared for her arrival. "I built that last winter," Thad explained, catching her surprised glance. "Didn't know why. Guess now I do." Bella touched the quilt folded at its foot, her eyes stinging. For the first time in her life, a place had been made ready for her. The days fell into rhythm. In the mornings, Bella swept the floor and stoked the fire while Thad split wood outside. His axe swung with clean precision, muscles taut beneath his shirt, snow glittering on his dark hair. Bella found herself watching from the doorway, the sting of winter air forgotten in the quiet awe of his strength. When he caught her gaze, he only nodded once, a silent acknowledgment that needed no words. In the afternoons, Bella cooked. At first she doubted herself. How could she make meals fit for a man who lived off the land? But soon her confidence grew. She transformed beans, potatoes, and venison into hearty stews that warmed the cabin through. One evening, after tasting her bread fresh from the hearth, Thad said simply, "Better than my mother's." Bella laughed, startled, cheeks warming. "Don't lie to me." "I don't lie," he replied. The sincerity in his tone silenced her protest. Small acts began to weave a bond between them. When a storm ripped shingles from the roof, Bella climbed the ladder at his side, passing nails as he hammered. Her hands grew raw from the cold, but when she faltered, he steadied her with a touch that lingered a moment too long. When she struggled to carry a bucket of water from the creek, he didn't snatch it away but placed his hand over hers on the handle, lifting it together. When she burned her finger at the stove, he wrapped it gently in cloth, muttering, "You've done enough today. Sit." Each kindness was quiet, unassuming, but to Bella, starved for respect, it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. At night they sat by the fire, Bella often embroidered by lamplight, while Thad whittled wood into figures of deer and bears. Sometimes silence stretched long, yet it was a silence that comforted. Other times he surprised her with stories from his past, his youth in the city, the war he had fled, the corruption that had driven him to seek honesty in the mountains. "I left behind more than money," he admitted one night, staring into the flames. "I left behind people who thought honor could be bought. Out here, I learned it can't. A man has to live it every day." Bella set her sewing aside, voice low. "And me? What do you see in me, Thad? If you left the world of wealth and pretty things, why chain yourself to someone like me?" He turned then, his gaze steady. "I don't see chains. I see freedom. I see someone who gives more than she takes. Someone who deserves a place where no one laughs at her again." Her throat closed with emotion. She bent her head, tears slipping down unnoticed. As weeks passed, the cabin transformed. Bella planted herbs in pots on the windowsill, their green shoots softening the rough timbers. She patched curtains from scraps of cloth, letting warm light spill more gently into the room. She sang softly while she worked, hymns she'd once sung in church, her voice trembling at first, then steadier as confidence returned. Thad listened from outside, pausing in his chores, the corners of his mouth lifting in the faintest smile. But it wasn't just Bella who changed. Thad, once silent and distant, began to laugh more, a deep rumble that shook the walls. He let her tease him about his solemn face, let her scold him when he tracked mud across the floor. And when he came in late one night with bloodied knuckles from chopping ice, he did not retreat into stoicism. He let her clean the cuts, let her fuss over him, let her care. "Feels strange," he murmured, watching her bind his hand. "What does?" "Having someone tend to me." Bella smiled faintly. "Then get used to it." For a long moment their eyes met, the fire flickering between them. The air carried a charge neither dared name. By spring, the cabin was no longer just a shelter. It was a home. And Bella, once auctioned like a burden, began to believe she might belong there. Yet even as warmth blossomed between them, shadows gathered on the horizon. Whispers from the town reached Thunder Peak. Men who had mocked Bella before now muttered about Thad's hidden wealth, about land worth stealing. And the name that returned most often on bitter lips was the one Bella had tried to forget, Reginald Fairfax. It began with riders spotted on the lower ridge, strangers with sharp eyes and sharper questions. Thad returned from town one evening, jaw tight, boots heavy with snow. Bella, stirring stew at the hearth, felt the shift in the air before he spoke. "They're asking about the mountain," he said, "about the cabin, about you." She set the ladle down carefully. "Who?" "Your father among them," he muttered, voice hard, "and men who smell of whiskey and powder." The name struck Bella like ice water. Reginald Fairfax, the man who had auctioned her, who had pocketed blood money and called it survival. She had prayed she would never see him again. The following week, Copperfield's gossip reached even their remote cabin. Augustus Dugan, a debt collector, claimed Bella was not free at all, that Thad had stolen her under the guise of a bid, that she belonged by law to her father's creditors until every last cent was paid. Bella's hand shook as she held the tattered flyer Dugan had nailed to the church doors. "Missing, Arabella Fairfax. Reward for her safe return." "They want to drag me back," she whispered, voice breaking, "as if I'm still a debt to be collected." Thad tore the flyer in half. His eyes stormed dark. "You're not property. Not now. Not ever." But beneath his fury, she sensed unease. That night, Bella pressed him by the fire. "You've fought men like this before. You know what they're capable of. Why are you so certain we can stop them?" For a long moment, Thad said nothing. Then, quietly, "Because I've seen worse. In war, in cities where men killed for coin and left the innocent to starve. I left that world, Bella. I came here to bury it. But it follows, doesn't it?" His confession hung between them, raw and heavy. Bella reached for his hand. "You don't have to face it alone anymore." Days later, Reginald himself climbed the ridge, flanked by 2 thugs. His once proud coat hung in tatters, his face hollow from drink. But his voice carried the same cruel bite. "Arabella," he sneered, standing in the doorway of the cabin, "you've grown comfortable, haven't you? Think you can forget your blood, your name? You are mine to bargain, girl, and I've found a buyer who'll pay more than 1,000. Bella's knees weakened, but Thad stepped forward, filling the space with his broad frame. "You'll leave?" Reginald's laugh was brittle. "You think your fists scare me? The law is on my side. The sheriff already owes me favors. One word, and you'll hang for kidnapping." Bella's heart pounded. She had no dowry, no proof, only shame, trailing her like a shadow. Yet something inside her stiffened. She stepped forward, voice shaking, but firm. "No, father. The law you speak of is the same you spat on when you sold me. You forfeited your right to call me daughter that day." For the first time, Reginald faltered. His sneer twitched, his eyes narrowing. "Ungrateful wretch," he hissed. But he backed away, leaving threats in the snow behind him. The cabin felt smaller after he left, the fire too hot, the silence too loud. Bella sat at the table, head in her hands. "He won't stop. I know him. He'll burn this place, Thad. He'll drag me back." Thad knelt beside her, rough palm cupping her cheek. "Then let him come. He'll find more than a girl to mock. He'll find a woman who knows her worth, and a man who'd stake his life to protect it." Her tears fell freely, not from fear this time, but from the fierce weight of his vow. Still, whispers in town grew. Some said Bella bewitched the mountain man with her cooking, her softness, her curves. Others whispered Thad's wealth, rumors of a copper vein hidden deep in Thunder Peak. Greed turned tongues into knives. And in the dark of night, Bella found herself awake, staring at the rafters, wondering if their fragile peace could endure the storm that loomed. The attack came at dusk, when the sky over Thunder Peak bled red. Bella was stirring a pot of stew when the first stone shattered the cabin window. She froze, ladle trembling in her hand. "Stay low," Thad growled, already reaching for the rifle propped against the hearth. Boots crunched on snow outside. Voices jeered. Then Reginald's shrill call cut through the twilight. "Arabella, come out now, and no harm will come to you. That brute cannot keep you. You are mine by blood and by law." Bella's stomach turned. She glanced at Thad, who stood like a fortress, broad shoulders squared, rifle steady in his grip. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw not fear, but resolve. "Stay behind me," he murmured. The cabin door shook as a boot slammed against it. Another blow, then another. Wood splintered. Bella clutched the cross at her throat, whispering a prayer she barely remembered. The door gave way with a crash, and shadows spilled inside. 3 men, armed with pistols and knives. Reginald slunk in behind them, eyes gleaming with triumph. "There she is," he sneered, pointing at Bella. Take her!" Thad fired a warning shot into the beam above their heads. Sparks rained down, filling the cabin with smoke and the stench of powder. "One step closer," he thundered, and the next shot finds a heart. The thugs hesitated, but Reginald shrieked, "Cowards! She's worth a fortune! Do it!" One lunged. Thad swung the rifle like a club, the crack of wood against bone echoing in the room. The man dropped, moaning. Another rushed from the side, but Bella, heart-hammering, grabbed the heavy iron skillet from the stove and struck him square across the jaw. The man staggered back, cursing. For a moment, silence reigned. Bella stood panting, skillet clutched in white-knuckled hands. Thad looked at her, pride blazing in his eyes. "You see?" he said hoarsely, never lowering his rifle. "She is no prize to be claimed. She is a fighter." Reginald's face twisted with rage. He pulled a pistol from his coat, aiming at Bella. "Ungrateful sow," he spat. "If I can't sell you, I'll end you." Bella froze. Thad stepped in front of her, arms spread wide. The shot rang out, deafening in the small cabin. Smoke curled. Bella's scream tore through the air, until she realized the bullet had missed. Thad had knocked Reginald's arm upward at the last instant, sending the shot into the rafters. With a roar, Thad drove his fist into Reginald's jaw. The older man crumpled, his pistol clattering to the floor. Outside, shouts rang out, neighbors arriving, drawn by the gunfire. The remaining thugs fled into the trees, leaving Reginald groaning in the snow. Bella stumbled forward, chest heaving. She stood over her father, tears stinging her eyes. "You sold me once," she whispered, voice breaking, "but you will never own me again." The cabin behind her glowed with firelight, a sanctuary of warmth against the encroaching dark. She turned, and Thad was there, bloodied but unbowed, his hand reaching for hers. She took it without hesitation. In that clasp, stronger than any contract or curse, the battle was won. Snow fell softly the next morning, covering the bloodstains outside the cabin as if the mountain itself wished to bury the violence. Inside, the hearth roared with fresh logs, casting a golden glow across the rough-hewn walls. Bella sat wrapped in a quilt Thad had pulled over her shoulders, her hair still tousled from the night's terror. Across from her, Thad tended the fire, the bandage at his temple stark against his dark hair. He moved with quiet purpose, as if simply keeping the flames alive meant keeping her safe. Neither spoke for a long while. The storm outside raged, but within those walls there was peace. Finally, Bella broke the silence. "I thought I'd lost everything last night, my name, my freedom, even my life." Thad turned, his gaze steady. "You didn't lose anything. You fought, you stood, and you won." She looked at him, tears shining. "I would not have stood if not for you." He crossed the room and knelt beside her. His hand, calloused and scarred, brushed a stray lock from her face. "You don't owe me thanks, Bella. This is your home now, if you'll have it. You're safe here, safe, with me." Her throat tightened. She had never been offered safety, never been offered choice. For the first time, she realized she was not merely surviving. She was beginning to live. Outside, the wind howled down Thunder Peak. Inside, two figures sat close to the fire, hands entwined, the flicker of flame painting hope across their faces. Yet, as dawn broke over Copperfield, one question lingered like the mist curling through the pines. Was love strong enough to protect them not only from her father's greed, but from the world that had already judged them both? Stories like Bella and Thad's remind us that worth is never measured in pounds, coins, or cruel words. It is found in love that chooses us even when the world turns away. Every time I read your comments, I'm reminded that these stories connect us across mountains, oceans, and miles. Where are you listening from tonight? Share your corner of the world below. And if you still believe in love that protects, redeems, and dares to say, "You are priceless," don't leave. The next story I tell will be meant for you.